In one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in European history, researchers entered a cave in northern Spain and found the remains of an entire Neanderthal family. 13 individuals, 7 adults, 3 teenagers, 3 children. DNA confirmed they were related, and the marks on their bones told a story no one wanted to believe. Every one of them had been consumed by other Neanderthals. The bones had been processed the same way as hunted animals found in the same layers of dirt. This was not an attack by predators. This was done by beings who thought, who planned, who looked exactly like the people they destroyed. And that is only the beginning. Because the deeper you go into the archaeological record, the darker it gets. From survival cannibalism to organized massacre to something that no other species on Earth has ever done. They turned the violence into a ritual, and then they built a temple for it. That cave is called El Sidrón. It sits in a green, temperate corner of Asturias, in what is now northwestern Spain. The bones are about 50,000 years old, and the story they tell is not what anyone wanted to find. The 13 Neanderthals, the family, were not killed by the cold or by starvation in the usual sense. Their diet had been mostly plants and nuts for a long time. They were weakened, malnourished, clinging on. The females in the group had been brought in from outside clans. DNA showed that clearly, which means the group was trying to avoid inbreeding. They were planning, cooperating, doing everything a social species does to keep itself alive. It didn't matter. Another group found them, and whatever happened next left no ambiguity in the bones. The skulls had been opened. The long bones had been split. Every mark on those remains matches what archaeologists find on the bones of hunted game processed for food. These people were not buried. They were not mourned. They were treated as a resource by other people who looked just like them. Now picture being there. You don't know what a country is, or a city, or even a word for war. Your world is the cave, the fire, and the people around you. Maybe 15 individuals, your entire universe. And then, one day, the universe ends. Not to a saber-toothed cat, not to a cold winter, to others. Others who walk and talk and think the way your people do. Others who carry the same tools and know how to use them. That was 50,000 years ago. And it was happening everywhere. Move north. A cave in Belgium called Goyet. Around 40,000 to 45,000 years ago, at least 5 Neanderthals met the same fate here, 4 adolescents or adults and 1 younger individual. The evidence is identical: cut marks, percussion marks, marrow extraction. Every bone treated the same way as the horse and reindeer bones in the same layers of dirt. But Goyet revealed something no other site had shown at this scale. After the remains were processed, 4 of the largest bones, femurs and tibias, were picked up and repurposed as tools, retouchers, the kind of hard, dense implement you press against the edge of a flint blade to sharpen it. The researchers at the University of Tübingen published their findings in scientific reports and put it as plainly as science allows. The Neanderthals at Goyet treated human remains identically to hunted fauna. No distinction. First a resource for food, then a resource for tool making. That is all. Sit with that for a moment. The remains didn't just disappear, they became part of the equipment, part of the machinery that would be used to do the same thing again to someone else. This wasn't chaos. This was efficiency. The kind of efficiency that only comes from a brain sophisticated enough to plan ahead. And if you are thinking that this was somehow unique to Neanderthals, that our species, Homo sapiens, was above this, what I'm about to tell you will end that thought. About 14,700 years ago, in a cave in Cheddar Gorge in southern England, a group of Homo sapiens, Magdalenians, anatomically identical to you, did something that goes beyond hunger, beyond survival. beyond anything a desperate animal would do. They made vessels out of human skulls. The process was not fast, not frantic, not panicked. It was methodical. They carefully removed all soft tissue from the face and skull, leaving distinct tool marks that researchers can still read thousands of years later. Then they removed the facial bones and the base of the skull, and then they took the cranial vault, the dome of the head, and shaped it, smoothed the edges, turned it into a drinking vessel made from the remains of one of their own. Now here is what separates this from everything before it. These people were not starving. Gough's cave was full of animal remains, horses, deer, grouse, hare. They had food. This was not a last resort. This was their culture. Dr. Sylvia Bello at the Natural History Museum in London studied these remains for years. Her conclusion, instead of burying their dead, these people consumed them. This was their funeral rite, and they didn't stop at consumption. They carved designs into the bones. One forearm bone has a zigzag pattern engraved into it, after it had been completely cleaned and processed. Art, on the remains of a person they consumed, made by a brain identical to yours. If this is the kind of history you want to understand, the real history, not the clean version, this channel exists for exactly that. Subscribe, and we'll keep going deeper. Everything so far happened in caves. Small groups, a family here, 5 people there. Violence measured in single digits. What happened at Nataruk is a different category. On the shores of a dried-up lagoon about 30 kilometers west of Lake Turkana in Kenya, a team from Cambridge found 27 individuals. Men, women, they were roughly 10,000 years old, and they had all died violently at the same time. 10 of the 12 relatively complete skeletons showed extreme blunt force trauma, skulls fractured by heavy weapons, bones shattered. Several individuals had been struck with projectiles, stone-tipped arrows, or throwing spears. In one man's skull, an obsidian bladelet was still embedded in the bone, exactly where it entered and never came out. Several of the remains showed signs consistent with restraint, hands positioned in ways that only make sense if they were bound before they were killed. Among them, one woman in the late stages of pregnancy. The remains of her unborn child were still preserved with her. This was not a battle. In a battle, you find weapons on both sides. You find defensive wounds where people fought back. At Nataruk, you find a group that was overwhelmed, restrained, eliminated. An entire community, including a pregnant woman, destroyed by people who walked upright, made tools, spoke a language, and decided that every single person in this group needed to die. 10,000 years ago. People who were genetically, anatomically, neurologically identical to you and me. Now rewind, all the way back, past Nataruk, past Gough's Cave, past Goyet, past El Sidrón, back before our species, before Neanderthals were fully Neanderthals, back to the oldest murder ever found, Sima de los Huesos, the Pit of Bones, a cave in northern Spain, the same mountain range as El Sidrón but 380,000 years earlier. At the bottom of a 43-foot vertical shaft, the remains of at least 28 individuals, and among them, a skull they labeled Cranium 17, a young adult. Species uncertain, probably early Neanderthal or Homo heidelbergensis. 2 fractures on the left side of the forehead, directly above the left eye. Researchers CT scanned the skull, built 3-dimensional models of the impact trajectories, and ran every alternative explanation. Rock fall, accidental impact, post-mortem damage. None of them fit. Both fractures came from the same weapon, delivered from slightly different angles. The first blow fractured the bone, the second went through it. And the location, the face, is textbook. Forensic science has known for over a century that intentional violence targets the face. Accidents don't. Someone stood in front of this person 430,000 years ago, struck twice and killed them. Then the body went into the pit. And that is the oldest confirmed homicide on Earth. Older than fire in most places, older than clothing, older than art. Killing each other predates nearly everything else that makes us human, which means it was never a corruption, never a breakdown, never something that went wrong. It was there from the start, and eventually we sanctified it. Göbekli Tepe, southern Turkey, the oldest known temple complex on the planet, built roughly 11,000 years ago by hunter-gatherers who hadn't invented farming yet. Massive carved stone pillars, animal reliefs, a place of deliberate, organized worship thousands of years before Stonehenge, and among the stones, 3 human skulls, carved, not damaged, carved. Deep grooves cut deliberately with stone tools across the forehead and down the back of the skull. Precise incisions, measured in millimeters. One skull had a hole drilled through the top of the head, positioned so the skull could be hung vertically, face forward. Traces of red ochre pigment painted onto the bone. These skulls were displayed, mounted, presented to whoever entered this place. Whether they were ancestors being honored or enemies being exhibited, nobody knows. But the craftsmanship was intentional. The carvings were designed to be seen. Think about what that ark looks like. 430,000 years ago, one human killed another and left the body in a pit. 50,000 years ago, groups consumed families and used their bones as tools. 14,700 years ago, they turned skulls into vessels and carved art into the remains. 10,000 years ago, they eliminated entire communities at scale. And 11,000 years ago, they carved human skulls with precision and hung them in the first temple ever built. The violence didn't go away. It evolved. It became language, then ritual, then architecture. It became sacred. So what do you do with this? The easy answer is to say they were animals, that the world was savage and they had no choice. But that's not what the evidence says. At El Sidrón, the family that was consumed had been carefully managing their genetics to survive. At Gough's cave, the people who made skull vessels had plenty of food and carved decorative art into the bones. At Göbekli Tepe, the people who hung skulls in a temple had already organized thousands of workers to build it. These were not mindless brutes. They were thinking, planning, creating, and destroying each other at the same time. That is the darkest thing in this video, not any single act of violence. The darkest thing is that none of it was mindless. Every skull that was fractured, every bone that was repurposed, every life that was taken, it was done by beings capable of love, cooperation, art, and forward planning. The same brain that carved a zigzag pattern into a forearm bone was the brain that stripped it clean first. The same hands that drilled a perfect hole in a skull at Göbekli Tepe could have held someone they loved with equal precision. We are all descendants of this. Every one of us carries DNA shaped by 430,000 years of conflict. The capacity for it is not a bug. It is the oldest feature in the software. And understanding that is not comfortable, but it is necessary, because you cannot build something better on top of a foundation you refuse to look at. The next time someone tells you that violence is unnatural, that humans were meant for peace and something went wrong, remember a fractured skull at the bottom of a 43-foot pit in Spain. Nothing went wrong. We were always this, and we built everything else on top of it. If you want to keep uncovering what the bones actually tell us about who we are, subscribe. There's much more beneath the surface.